Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We will be going through how to create a blacklight or bioluminescent skin effect. In this lesson, we will be breaking down how to create a procedural setup using noises inside the shader graph so everything updates with a few simple clicks and sliders. So let's jump in and see what it's all about. Okay, so first, what I've done is just made a base RS material and I put that onto this frog, and I just have a plane and I have a HDRI in the background from HR Haven, and we're just going to sort of build this up, layer by layer, just like I did. So the first thing I like to do is, sort of add a base color. So, and a lot of people like to add an absolute color. They bring that in and then just sort of say pick their orange or whatnot, and then sort of see what they want to do with that. So they just add it to the diffuse, and then they start to build up from there. What I prefer to do when I'm trying to create stuff that's a little bit more nuanced is I'll actually use a ramp as opposed to that. And you can see this has UV, so it's just following that. But what I'll do is essentially go from here and do the same thing, like just have your base colors. But I find that doing it this way, you're going to get a little bit more realism. Um, and you could even scale this, so you have like a noise in there or something to break it up a bit more, frequency. And it's subtle, but that's sort of going to give you, this sort of model feeling on top of it. So that way, when you're creating your shaders, it's not just a simple flat color. It's going to have all of the variation that like a skin would. So there, like you can see that versus this, and it's really not that much more work. And I just tend to like how that looks a little bit more. So now that I have my base color, everything will sort of derive from this. I'm going to have a color layer and then just some different masks and stuff to sort of separate it all up. So let's just create a color layer. And then I'm going to feed this into the base. And I'm just going to feed this straight in so you can see that, it's black. And that's because right now it's enabled, but the color is black. So, you could set it to screen or something, but, that doesn't really help when it's just a solid. So what we're going to do is first I'm going to create a curvature. And I just always do this, and it's just my habit is I always like to feed in sort of a node on its own, just so I see what's happening precisely. And then from there, I'll start to pipe it back into the different things that's happening. So this right here is this curvature. This frog I built was sort of real world scale, so I have to change some of these numbers a bit than what would be your standard stock. So I'm just gonna go 0.25 and see how that updates, and then that would literally be going into the next part is my mask. So if I feed that in, we need another color for there to be two colors. So this ramp, I'm just going to do color correct. And then spread this out a bit more. Split this up a bit more. There we go. Just so there's some more real estate. And then take this ramp, feed it into the input. And then from here, I'm just going to, skew this a little bit with, just like this. And that's sort of how I get all these different colors. It feels sort of like they fit together because they're all using the same base. And then go back. So I'm just typing in these numbers that I played around to get. So, this is essentially going to be our first color. So as opposed to using this ramp just straight, I have this color correct, and I'll put that into my base. And then I have a second color that, I'm going to basically take this color correct, duplicate, put into my layer 1, And now that's enabled is using these two colors. And if I was to change this one, you'll see that it will essentially update based on that. So I just have to feed this back in, and you can see already that it's slightly different. That's just to show you a more obvious. What I did for the second one was just something very, very subtle compared to the first one. And put that one, and it's just essentially giving us like a little bit of a green around sort of the edges. And, you know, it may not seem like a whole lot, but it's these small little imperfections and differentiations that will sort of build up to create the, you know, actual final result. So now that I have those two set up, I'll essentially make another color and then another mask and another color and another mask. So I'll do that now, but you know, it just won't take all the time in the world. So here's max and noise. I'm just feeding in directly. I switch this to dense, and I change the overall scale, and then that sort of got fed in. So now I have another mask, and let's just feed that into layer 2. Copy the color correct. You know, the big thing is just making sure that everything's as organized as possible. Break that down. And again, this one is going to be a new color that will be fed in. For this, we'll make it a little bit more extreme. Go. So now this layer, get that in, put in the layer color, and make sure to enable it. You can see I've built up that next one. Then now we'll just do one more max and noise. This one, I'm just going to feed in directly. I used a wavy noise, or a wavy turbulence. And then I just up the octaves. And again, the scale, because this is a really small object, it's like this frog could fit in your hand. That's basically the size. And you get sort of this. And the reason why I'm using the octaves, if I put this to 1, you can see it's fairly simple. So the higher the octaves, the more sort of detail you're going to get in this particular noise. So then now we'll create a layer 3 mask and color. And then let's make this bigger, so you know, things sort of line up a little easier in terms of visually. And then now I'll feed this into the mask, but we still need to enable it, and we still need another color correct. So I'm going to copy paste. Let's give that 1 second. There we go. And then let's just take my ramp input, and let's just take a look at what that color is doing. And then let's tweak that to be, we'll keep that all the same. Just change the color. Try something. Yeah, something reddish. Let's try. Yeah, something a little oranges. And then we'll put that into a layer color. And then let's feed that in. And there you have it. So, you know, it's literally just taking a color, skewing it, and then just different masks are sort of feeding in what area of it is getting which sort of texture. You know, like just using a curvature and 2 masks, 2 max on noises, and that sort of drives everything. So now that I have this material, and, I haven't done anything to it, it's just standard RS material, no roughness change or anything. Change that in a bit. Sort of make this a little larger. Output. And then we'll just create a incandescent. And then also we need a material blender. Just feed that in. Just came in off to the side. And then it's just that larger. Make our material the base. And then our incandescent will be layer 1. This will be the layer color. I'm just going to rearrange them so this is just on top. And what we'll need to do is also make sure we have a blend color option. I'm just going to put that in the middle. Let's just move this down below. Here, I'm just trying to center things. And then the incandescent, if you look at that, right now it's just going to be all white. But if I feed in this layer color we've built into the color, you'll get this. And right now it's intensity at 1, so I just set this to 2. And that will give you your illumination. So now you're pretty much set that you have this. And right now it's, blending from that original ramp over here. So I'm just going to take my layer color, feed that into the diffuse color. Also take it and feed it into properties, translucent color, and then go into my material. And then say if I pump that up, you'll see that it feels sort of almost like subsurface. This is at the 1 right now. I'm just going to set it to like 0.35. Just to give actually that's 0.45. A little sense that, the skin, has translucency. And the roughness, let's just make it 1.5 or 0.15. Make it feel like it's sort of wet. So now, in terms of the blend, we have to mix these together. So we've just created all this sort of setup, so we might as well be using some of these masks. So I'm just going to take the very bottom one that looks like this, because it has some, interesting details into it. And what I like to do is just take a ramp, and I'm going to feed this in as our blend color. So if I just take this noise, feed it in to the ramp, and then I'm just going to feed this into so we can preview it, because nothing will have changed. And then from here, I'm just going to go to crunch it. So take that, make it a little darker. Oops. Let's take the ramp. Sorry, computer's just freezing a little. There we go. That darker. Layer up there. Somewhere around there for now. And then we're going to feed this into our blend. And this is what I meant by like making sure that you have some space. I'm just going to move things around a little bit more, just to make things a little bit clearer what's happening. And then feed this in to our output. So now we have this shader is basically controlling everything. So, this is telling us how much of a glow we're getting and in which section. And, you could create, different versions of this. And then, that's how you're going to be able to sort of have your separation between the two. So what I'm gonna actually do right now is make another ramp and then sort of invert it. With this one, which is our blend, just gonna create another ramp right next to it. Let's feed this the same noise that we're using at the bottom. And let's feed that in to that ramp. This new ramp. And this one, I'm going to actually just invert the gradients. So I'm just right-clicking inverting. And then I'm going to take this black and sort of move it into crunch. And then I'm going to create another node that's gray and darken it. And just going to sort of figure out where precisely this one should go. So let's try 50 in lock position around there. Make it a little less black, slightly. Let's see what we can get out of it. And this one, a little darker. Actually, make it a little lighter. There we go. And then let's see what that does. Feed this new one. And let's just flip that a little bit. And I think that sort of does what I needed to do. And you might be wondering, well, that doesn't seem like a whole lot of difference, but if I was to just, say, take this base and turn off these colors, this is what I'm getting. So this right here is sort of driving how much is going to be incandescent. So if you needed to, you could literally just take this ramp, animate, and then go from nothing to something. Like, say, get rid of this. So I'm like, hey, I'm going from nothing and then just opening it up and growing it out until I get what I need. So I'm just going to do that. That a little bit just to clamp it off. So now what I like to do is just sort of organize things. So I'm just using colors instead of renaming things, but like that's my blend that I need to worry about. I'll leave these 3 materials the same. I can leave those the same. I could also just take them all, color them all one way, just so I know what's happening in my scene. And I'm just going to the, if you select one option, it's a general and the basic. It's just a color code thing, so I know where everything's going. Let's make this max on noise, for instance. I don't know, really fuchsia. So we know that this is sort of like the master node that controls everything. So when I change this noise, this pattern would update, which would then change this ramp, which would then change how these two are being separated. So now that I have that, I'm going to feed back. Actually, before that, let's take this RS color layer and actually tweak it a bit. So I'm going to take another color layer, or actually a color correct, and this time take the color layer that has all the colors that are split, feed it into the input, feed that out. And then this one, I'm going to play with the gamma mode, and I'm actually going to change the hue completely. And let's just bring the saturation just down a little bit. So this is just what's going to get fed into my incandescent, and into my diffuse, and into my translucency. Okay, I got it. And then I'm going to bring back that down, 0.25. Let's just color this purple so it fits in. Now when I feed this in, it's just more about playing with this one ramp to try to get, the two mixing together. So that should pretty much do it. And now the big thing now is obviously I have a dome that's set to day. I could just bring this down just to make it darker, like a darker day. And you could render this out and, render out a matte just for that section. Or what you can do if you want to do it in camera is, I'm just going to create a new camera. And in here, I'm going to let's turn on the exposure. Turn out the vignette. Make it 6. And then turn on the bloom. And then now it's more about what your threshold is and what your intensity has been set up to be. And make sure that you're actually looking through the camera. I am. Just make sure in that camera. And then just see about, there we go. So just playing with the threshold, just in RS, but you can do this in comp. That would be, a better way of doing this. You can sort of control what part is becoming bioluminescent and which part is not. So if I go back now to my fader and then just sort of play with this, I'm sort of controlling what part. Let's just get rid of this for a second. What part is glowing and what part is not. And that's pretty much all there is to this. And, now it's more about playing with, like, maybe when it's glowing, you bring down this, or maybe you bring down the weight of your skin. So it just makes the bioluminescent part pop more. And like I said, in comp, you could switch this up, or you could even take this and now change, here in the hue saturation, what color you'd like it to be. And then that's pretty much all there is to it. And let's just turn on back the eyes, just so it doesn't seem so freaky. And yeah, so, it's a quite simple technique, but I think it's very, very powerful is, essentially understanding that you can drive, almost everything through noises. And then once you have your noises set up properly, you're just feeding in different, colors, color ramps, and then sort of just playing with how those, sort of tweak, and, you're going to get very different results. And, updating any noise to what you need. Maybe you don't want that many octaves. Maybe you want it to be a different seed. And, you can sort of just have everything you need. And, as you animate this up, you'd animate your light down. So it would almost look like a change in day. If you're saying, like, hey, it's daytime, you would then, have that up. And then on this side, you can either change how your ramp is to change the size of the thing, or you could just change the intensity to bring it down, and then you'd sort of reverse it when it's the nighttime. And, with that, I think you have enough to, create anything you need. And, if you really want to create mats and stuff like that, you would just literally, take your noises, and you can, I'm just going to turn off the bloom for a second. These noises, that are driven through new ramps, you can feed this through, either you render it out as a separate pass, or you can do an AOV, which is literally, you'd just be saying store your color to AOV. So if I do this and take this ramp, and all I do is I put it in and put it in input 0, and then this material that is our hero material goes into the base, and then feed this in to our output. You now get the option to say add a new custom AOV and call it something. So let's just say base base noise. And what you'll get is when you're rendering, you have to go to your render settings, into your AOVs, make sure that they're enabled, show, and you'll see that it's created already a base noise already for me. So when I go down here, it will create the matte for me automatically. So when I'm rendering out my beauty, I'll already have a ramp that's a mask of everything. So in comp, I could use this either to select that color and change it, or to crunch it, or do whatever I want. And then I have my emission, and I can sort of use that as my matte. Also, it's a way to change colors that way, so you don't need to necessarily go into your shader node and then have to animate here the color. You can then use that matte as a way of hitting that color, and then you could do all your posts and stuff like that in comp, as opposed to having to have like a bloom turned on and stuff like that. You can then add a glow and stuff like that in After Effects or Nuke or Fusion. So yeah, so that's sort of the way I built this, and hopefully this will be something you can add to your pipeline, and hope to see whatever you create with it. Thanks.